Welcome back. David Penn here, your host, coming to you from the studios of Free People Radio here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Free People Radio, where you can visit the store at freepeopleradio.com. You can buy shirts, you can buy coffee mugs, you can buy things that you're going to buy anyhow. If you like the content, please buy it from Free People Radio store. Uh, the subject of this short video is Canada. Canada has been in the news. There's no doubt that President Trump has antagonized the Canadian people by his deprecating comments to Prime Minister Trudeau, who recently left the stage, and his continuous reference to Canada as the 51st state. This past week, there was an election. A new leader was elected, Mark Carney. Let's listen to a clip.
It's a very close victory. It's, there's no majority or anything, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult, I think, for him to run. But he nevertheless had a victory, and he's a very nice man, I think.
Do you plan to talk to him about making Canada a 51st state?
He wants to come and see me. He's going to come this week or next week.
So will you talk to him about making Canada a 51st state, annexing Canada?
I'll always talk about that. You know why? We subsidize Canada to the tune of $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. In fact, we don't want their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't even want their energy. We have more than they do. We don't want their lumber. We have great lumber. All I have to do is free it up from the environmental lunatics. We don't need anything that they have. We're giving them. I asked Mr. Trudeau, who I call Governor Trudeau, I said, not Prime Minister, Governor. I said, Governor Trudeau, could I ask you one question? Why are we giving you $200 billion? Why are we subsidizing Canada?
Well, President Trump, this is from a appearance he made on Meet the Press this past weekend. That would have been on May 4. He doesn't seem to be backing off on this antagonism of the Canadian people. I have been in Canada many times. Of course, we're in Minneapolis, St. Paul. That's Minnesota. We have a border with Canada. We share some very strong cultural traditions with Canada. We're a hockey state. Did a lot of competition with Canadians when I was growing up in that hockey realm. I have business in Canada. I learned many, many years ago when I first started doing business in Canada that just because the Canadian people dress very similar to me and speak a language very similar to what I speak, they have their own national characteristic. They have their own way of thinking about things, and they are distinct from the United States of America. Uh, Frankly, I think President Trump antagonized the Canadian people, which led to the victory of Mark Carney as the new prime minister, uh, uh, defeating the conservative Pierre Poilievre. Uh, but, this thing is being fenced in a strange way. All over the world, populists, what they call right wing, I would just call them people that represent the aspirations of the everyday citizens, populists, are winning elections. Just yesterday in Romania, a populist won the first round of that presidential election. So this populism is going on all over the world, and it is a rejection of globalism. It's a rejection of globalism. And if you're listening to me and you're not uh, tracking where I'm coming from on this globalism idea, and I think there's a lot of people that haven't really sat down to think about this yet. Globalism is the extinguishing of national identities and national borders in favor of one world government, one world economy, and one world currency. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with one world government per se. It's who's doing the governing and uh, how is that impacting my local neighborhood? My number one objection to globalism is administrators and bureaucrats in Geneva or New York City are so far from my neighborhood here in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. How could they possibly know what my family and my neighbors are seeking in the political process? So it kind of ends self governance as we know it here in the United States, where any American citizen can get off the couch, get in the game, and join your local political party, be it Democrat or Republican, and actually decide the future of this great country. Globalism nullifies that, what they call grassroots process. And because I believe in the right of every American citizen to self govern, I'm aligned with the nationalists, with the what they would call the right wing, but it's not right wing to me. It's about the policy of human well being. It's about affecting policies through politics that enhance the well being of every citizen and that maintain the Republic of the United States of America because I like self governing. I don't want the characteristic of my life determined by bureaucrats and administrators who have other goals than what I have. Now, this globalism thing goes back a long way. It started right after World War II, the idea being we needed global governance to prevent holocausts. Seems reasonable, except when we look around the world today, we're in World War III. So it hasn't worked from that perspective. And then other threats that required global governance were erected, such as global climate change, a problem so deep and so pernicious and so threatening that no one government could deal with it. It required a global response. Health, health, pandemics, again, a threat so great to human well being that it requires a global governance. Well, uh, I personally reject those ideas in the sense that I think that my state government, my county government, my national government can respond to those issues. And I think it's up to we, the people, to vote and to determine our futures, that to have draconian measures enforced upon us top down is a reduction of our freedom. And I say this, and I'm going to put this up at the Free People Radio store someday, a t shirt that says, I'd rather die from a tornado than a tyrant. That's me. You may have a different opinion. That's why we have a constitution that respects and protects the rights of minorities. And I don't mean minorities in terms of sectarian or color, I mean minority viewpoints. My minority viewpoint or your minority viewpoint is protected by our constitutional rule of law. If we have global governance, what happens to that protections when the global governance enforces certain kinds of realities upon we the people? Well, it seems to me that the election of President Trump was a rejection of globalism. When I watch the news, when I look at X, there's a lot of talk about prices, that President Trump was elected to reduce inflation. But actually, I think his mandate was much larger than that and really was about maintaining the borders of the Republic of the United States of America. Up in Canada, the Canadian people have elected a true globalist, a citizen of Ireland, the former governor of the Bank of England, a man who is part of the Commonwealth, already a global governance, the British Commonwealth, who they've elected by the narrowest of margins, something you don't hear on the news in the United States of America. The conservative lost by 2%. It was the best conservative showing in a decade. So, did President Trump undermine that conservative's electoral prospects? I think he did. And I would wish that President Trump would back off on the Canada's the 51st state, because that's not going to happen. He's antagonizing the leadership of Canada because he wants certain outcomes. And here's the outcome he wants. Hey, if you're not going to be a state, if we're not going to subsidize you, if you're not part of the union, then you're going to have to stand on your own feet. And how are you going to do that? You don't spend anything on military. You defend your country based on the defense given to you by the United States of America. Your economy is export dependent to the United States. What are you going to do, Canadians, to balance your relationship with the United States? We don't want a vassal subject. We want Canada to be for Canadians, and we want Canada to stand on its own, just like we want the United States of America, the Republic of the United States of America, to stand on its own. Thanks very much for joining. I look forward to being back with you soon again.